Hi, I'm Len Kiely. I was a resident of Bedford for over 50-odd years. I'm here at the Historical Society now talking to Don.
And I'm Don Corey, and we're going to go through just a few of the Historical Society pictures from the center of Bedford in the good old days. Let's start, Len, with this is a picture of Wilson Park. Wilson Park is on the left, the flagpole is there, and North Road goes off to the right.
That is as it was, as I recall.
There's the Jonas Monroe house. What do you remember about the old Jonas Monroe house?
Well, as I recall, at that time, I think Frank Jocelyn lived there, and the period around that time, it also became a restaurant on the lower floors. It was just the lower floors that I was. And it was used by the Lions Club and the Rotary Club for the usual meetings. And the other thing that I remember quite prominently about it was that it had these paintings. At that time, they did that in a lot of the older homes by an itinerant painter. I don't recall his name. But there were walls in there, that lower floors especially, that were just unbelievable. One of those memories, you know.
Well, the painter was Rufus Porter. We've got a couple of buildings here that had Rufus Porter paintings. And when that house was demolished for the Bedford Motel to go in, they saved a few of the murals. And the Historical Society has received one, and that's hanging over in Town Hall now in the auditorium. So
I'm glad.
all is not lost.
I remember the house going down or being torn down and the motel going in, yes.
What you're looking at right there is Fitch Tavern on the left, the woodshed on the right. But what you don't see is what's in the foreground. Why don't you tell us a little bit what's in the foreground?
Well, we could be sitting on the front steps of where we are now. This is the police station, not the library, historic district. But that's almost exactly as it looks today. There's a little more built across here, but the woodshed and all that is exactly as I recall it.
Well, that picture was probably taken about 1950 because this building that we're sitting on was completed in 1951.
Yeah.
And that's what's filling up the whole yard here now.
Yeah. We're sitting on the front steps taking that picture. This is what was the vacant lot where we are now sitting in the police station.
Yep. And that's a Congregational church right next door here.
Right, yeah. Which also has grown some.
The person that took that picture turned around and is pointing back in
Mudgeway?
south. Yep. Mudgeway would be running right through the middle of the picture.
Yeah, and the new library high school would be running down on the right.
Exactly. That's the old Fitch farm, Jenks farm.
Yes. Yeah.
And Frank Jocelyn then probably owned it. No, he didn't own that.
No.
The Jenks sold this to the town, and they sold the house, the tavern, to Frank Jocelyn. So, but this is what the Mudgeway looked like back in the 50s. Okay, there's a picture of the Common, and you're looking across to the houses on Elm Street, and the fire station would have just been coming in on the right-hand side there. But it looks a lot opener now, looking across there, than it that I recall recently.
And to the right used to be, I would say at that time, was I guess you call it the Bedford House. That's where all of the real functions were held. It's where the fire station is now. And that's where the all the big times, like the anniversary, the 200th anniversary, and all that was all centered around the old Bedford house, where they did have not full sound of talkies, but they had movies. And Lila Blake, that's the name I was saying. The Isla Blake used to play the piano. You get up for the horses and old movies. But that was a big part of town. They had a tavern downstairs, and they had some problems with rum, and it was there and very functional as I was growing up. It was where the 4-H had the things, and everything that happened in town happened in the Bedford house. At least what I called it. I don't know if this is intended or not, because at times somebody said it was, that they had their dances and things, and that cotton picking floor floated. I mean, you got a crowd up there, it moved. No, there was a big hall upstairs. Yeah, I don't remember whether there were rooms above that hall, but there was a big hall on the second floor, and very active, yes.
Oh yeah, here's the common, and that's the Bedford house.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're looking west toward
Right.
Wilson Park.
And that shows it in pretty good shape. It was quite active. That's a good looking building.
The old town hall?
Old Town Hall, at the time that I knew it, on the first floor, that changed a number of times. The second floor was the big hall. The third floor going down, which it still shows downstairs, again, the use of this changed many times, and the occupancy of it changed many times. But I can remember at the time I was most aware of it, let's say, the first floor, which raised more, the first floor was where the library was. Downstairs was the police station and 2 or 3 cells. And I remember going in, the first thing you saw was the cell, Chief Sullivan used to give you a little speech every time.
The old fire station.
Yes.
You remember the old fire station?
I remember the old fire station, and probably it has to do with other memories that we all have. And you hear so much now about bullying and all this type of thing that we're having problems with. Well, I can remember, of course it didn't happen to me, but the stories are, if there was any contention in the classroom with one you agreed with or disagreed with, it used to be, I'll meet you behind the fire station. So I remember the fire station, yes.
When they all came out of the 6th grade over there, then they'd settle for
Yeah, from the other building.
All right. Now this is up in the steeple, and that's looking down, and that's South Road going down there. And these are open fields around there that's all built up now. Were there a lot of fields back still through the center of town when you were growing up?
But as you go down the Great Road from beyond the town hall and the little shop center that's there now, you go down and you get to the bottom of the Great Road. Then in back of here was Christie's, and it was a chicken, pretty substantial chicken farm. But most of this was open until Curve Street cut back in here, and we played ball, and that was very open until, good part of my growing years, yeah. But see, it's hard to tell how far down that goes, because the railroad came in across through here, and prior to the railroad and prior to the town park there now, that was all open fields.
This is a picture that was described to us as the Elm Brook. Yeah, Elm Brook in the 50s. It was swampy, and I know when they built the new housing development, Washington Street, it must have been built in this, and now Washington Street has all sorts of problems when Elm Brook floods. And this, you can see why.
But the condition of swamps all through that area and South Road coming up, to the Great Road and behind the present shopping center and all that in there. That always was very low and swampy.
Proctor Sage House. Proctor Sage House used to be up there at the end of the road, opposite Jonas Monroe. And that one they wound up having to move about 10 years ago because the Plymouth dealer expanded everything.
That's why I'm asking so many questions. There was a house in this general location when we get relocated that was a very old house. I think it was the 17s, around that area, and a great old house. And an elderly lady lived there by herself is when I was growing up.
That's it.
And when I was pulling the hose and driving the truck, she was one of my, if that's the house, the only reason I'm getting some questions on the house, if that is the house, she was one of those people, the elderly people who saved the newspapers and the magazines and everything. So I remember a lot about it. She was a lovely lady. But at that time, they used a lot of kerosene, because you cooked with kerosene and you did a lot of things with kerosene. So and she was one of my first customers. And so in order to deliver to her barrel that she had, I had to move all kinds of papers and everything. But if that's the house and it's to the left of where the garage is now, and when Larry Gould tried to expand, again, because of the historic district being in progress in part then, he had many, well, I'd say 4 or 5 years of trouble not tearing that down, etc. And I think eventually it was moved to Carlisle. But that would be where the present Volkswagen deal is now, plus Larry Gould's in between where Larry Gould's are the other garages now, if that's the house I'm thinking of.
That is indeed, yep.
Okay.
Miss Proctor was the name.
Yes, yeah. That's
Okay.
those names, all my customers say, I don't forget, it's just I can't bring them back.
I have that problem. That's the barn to the Jonas Monroe house, but I want to get by that one. Here we go. Dominie Mance.
I could make a whole program on a Dominie Mance. Yes, I recognize the Dominie Mance. It is, as I recall, when I lived 2 houses down on the corner of Great Road and Hillside Avenue. There have been many changes and everything else, but the Dominie Mance, let's say at that time, was known as I'd say high caliber restaurant. Gourmet, what we call gourmet type meals now, would have been comfort food, but extremely well done and a lot of class. At that time, I lived with Clara B. Cutler, who lived 1-2 houses down. And at that time, the Dominie Mance served tea. And that lady, who was a lady, used to dress in the afternoon to go to the Dominie Mance for tea. I remember a lot about the Dominie Mance, yes.
Now this is going down South Road, and this is Crescent Street that goes right off here. So South Road coming down, and that's Crescent Street. The houses are the same, but there's a lot more trees, I noticed. These pictures are from 50 years ago. There's just a lot more trees in town now, but...
Well, the summer 38, 1938, I never thought this town would look the same. It was wiped clean. I was in Syracuse at the time. It took me 2 days to get home to the corner of Great Road and Hillside Avenue. And my brother and I, from that fall to the next fall, spent just cutting the trees on our lawn on the corner of Great Road and Hillside Avenue. I never thought this town would look the same, but it's come back. This is right across the street from the real estate office now, and the books. This is the bookshop and the bookstore. What's the name of the bookstore?
Well, it was Dunham's bookstore.
Dunham's bookstore. Yes, yeah.
And it looks kind of the same.
Dunham's bookstore, and then that house that was done over. I don't know if you got any of those. It's now condominiums. Lovely old colonial. As your face.
Yep.
Down to the left.
That one's right next to the fire
Yes,
department.
that was the fire station's here now.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
that's it. What did they have in this store? It's real estate and a paint store now. What was it back then?
Billy Halpin's, he sold meat, viand, you know, like they all used to sell viand or poultry or something. But below that part where what is it, paint store now, below that part was a meat store. But that's been there a long while. That was there when the Bedford house was here.
Okay. This is farther up the road. This is where B. Brown lives now. John Brown and B. Brown. Would be.
It's looking from coming out of Carlisle, or coming out of Concord Road, and to be on the right-hand side, and then the Mudgeway is in the other side of that house.
Yeah. And Mudgeway probably was not there when this picture was taken.
No.
It would have been the barn. Here's another view of Wilson Park, back in the 50s. So that would have been being taken from Concord Road, looking across the park.
That's a two-family house, as I remember. It looks much larger than this.
Well, it looked pretty bare. When did the old oak tree that was in Wilson Park, was that there when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Did that come down in the hurricane, or when did that come down?
It came down at such a time that I recall. I was aware of the fact that it had been there a long while, but whether I was 20 or 15, I don't recall. But I remember the big tree that did come down, yeah.
Because it looked pretty bare here, but this wouldn't have been that long after the 38 hurricane either, so there wasn't much, because there's
could
much
be.
bit more planting again. Yeah. This is Lila Blake's. Where did she live? Do you recall that? You said she was the one that played the music in the Bedford house. And the picture here just said this was her front door.
But she lived around the center of town and had been active other than just playing the piano. But her name was on everybody's lips, you know. This is the great road looking back.
Yep.
The house he just spoke about of the Browns was here. Mr. Champney, the father, I'll get into other things that I won't. But the transportation at that time was so good that he was an architect in Boston and commuted, and I can remember because he used to come up and across what later on became Bacon Road and up the Great Road, and he was as regular as the clock. But his son Ed Champney and my brother Tom Kiely, I used to say that Ed Champney and Tom Kiely were the first yuppies in Bedford. Ed Champney, the son of Mr. Champney, graduated from Harvard, and my brother graduated from MIT, one Magna Carta, the other one on Dean's List. And they were the first yuppies in town because they spent most of their time unemployed for the first year, settling in the things of the world in that barn, and that's where they were for a long while. And Ed Champney, at a later date, became very active in building the schools. But that was the Champney house, a lovely home, and pretty much the same. A lot of the houses in Bedford had hidden chambers or small hidden areas, and a great percentage of the time it was around the center entrance chimney. if you fool around some of these older houses, you realize that the way the center entrance chimney was, and why it was built that way, because it was built with the intention of more building either side, behind, or up. So they had to make, with the setting of the base of the chimney, all these ideas and recommendations in there. And then if they weren't used, it didn't fit in with some of the other architectural things. But there was you come back in the back of the house and come in the back of this, into where the sun, there was a room almost this big. You'd never know it was there. Yeah, a lovely home. Warren Cutler made wreaths and what do you call them? The hangers, stringers, they're long.
Garlands.
Huh?
Garlands.
Yeah. For that church, every year that I can remember, as long as he was alive. And we used to go to Fitchburg, Mass., which was quite a trip the first years, to get Mountain Laurel. And I thought his name should be remembered for that, because he did that every year that I can recall. I used to do some of them, but he had a lot of people helping him. But he covered that every year that I can recall. It seemed like that was a big trip I used to look forward to, you know.
Thanks for all of the insight into all of the what your recollections of the center of town were. It's interesting, and we have to pull some more pictures together to get you back here one more time.
Well, glad to be part of it.